What's good, Mimer Timers? I hope you guys are having a wonderful July. For today's episode, we have Matt Smart, who is the COO of GLT Limited. GLT Limited is a global trading company, trading crypto and providing financial solutions for different companies all over Asia. It's pretty cool what he does. If you don't know much about investment, trading, or crypto, as frankly, I don't, I'm still learning after a couple of years of getting into it myself. You might find it boring or irrelevant, or you just don't understand it. And yet I know some of you guys are going to find it really interesting. We also talk about his nomad capitalist-esque lifestyle and his background growing up in the Mormon church and how that's made him the person that he is today, because he's a super cool guy, very kind, compassionate human being who's doing all kinds of cool stuff, making moves throughout Asia throughout the past couple of years. And I know he'll continue to make big moves. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if there's anything you got out of it, maybe a crypto or investment friend, or maybe someone who grew up in the church, right? I'm hitting all these sweet, sweet notes right here. I hope you really get something awesome out of it because I love this guy so much. And without further ado, Matt Smart, let's get it. You know what time it is? It's mime time. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Mime Time. Today, I'm speaking with a very smart person that I know, and his name is Matt Smart, aka Jason Statham's stunt double. Matt, how are you today?
I'm good. Thanks, Mike.
Where are you right now?
I am in Phuket, Thailand.
Mm-hmm. Are you staying in an apartment or an Airbnb?
Yeah, I have an apartment here.
Okay, and how long have you been there now?
I came out here at the end of January, and I've been pretty much trapped here since. There's worse places to be trapped, but
when were you planning to come back to Korea?
I was expecting to be back in April. I thought April 1st I would be back in Korea and be in Korea for April, May, part of June, and then back here again July, August, September-ish is what I was thinking. But plans change.
Plans change, and the C word, Corona, gets in the way. Matt, what if you were to explain what you do, what is GLT, and what's your day-to-day life look like?
Right. So, GLT is a private partnership. It's me and a business partner, and we are doing investments, I guess, like you would say. That's, I guess, maybe alternative investments would maybe be, we do collateralized lending here in Thailand. I do a lot of crypto trading, and we are kind of just open to. We're structured so that we can get involved in anything that looks interesting to us, which is really exciting for me. And so I'm not super restricted by geographic locations or things like that, which I like. Yeah.
And what kind of investments look interesting to you? Like 401k and maxing out your Roth IRA, right? Like that's some cutting edge stuff.
That's some cutting edge stuff, and that's important. We're looking at. I'm trying to maximize our returns, right? So we're looking. I've been positioned in Asia since 2013. And so we're very interested in Asia in general, but we like emerging and developing markets. I think that there's sort of a lack of access to more, I guess, even some traditional, but a lot of different financial products that are useful for people. We're relatively creative in what we can come up with and solutions that we can find for people. And I think that makes it interesting. And I like that I'm not restricted by product type or borders. I've worked in traditional finance for a long time as a trader, and I always had a book that I managed that was usually with a fair amount of restrictions. I could only trade ETF products in the US, or I could only trade Kospi related products in Seoul. And it's nice to have, sort of again, be able to select any product that's appropriate or any sort of structure that's appropriate and come up with a way that works for everybody.
What's an investment that has given you good returns in the past, 3 to 5 years? What's something that you thought has been really solid? whether it's
In,
like
ter-
trading, whether it's
in terms of
trading
what
or.
we did, in
Hmm.
terms of what we've done, yeah, like trading's been good for us. We were well positioned, relatively early in the cryptocurrency, both run up and sell off, going into 18. Um, Being based in Asia, we were able to take advantage of a lot of the arbitrage opportunities that came up, which are, low risk and at the time quite high returns. So that was really interesting and really fun. Um, in terms of trading wise, like I love it. It's great. So I think I've told you before, in the height of that, I was sleeping in 2-hour shifts twice a day in order to trade the US and the Korea market. And it was crazy, but it was fun. So that was been really good. I think we're still kind of getting our feet off the ground here in Thailand with what we're working on, but I think it's positioned to be very interesting longer term. And I think the returns will be good.
That's awesome, bro. You're 40 now. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, just barely turned 40. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say that from the time you started working in finance back in your days in Chicago all the way up till now, working with your partnership, do you feel like you had a relatively successful and profitable career? Like what are your short and long term goals? Like does it still excite you?
It still excites me, absolutely. I do think I've had a profitable and a good career. I think um, it's been exciting at the very least, right? I started trading in 2007 and started just before the financial crash, or as the real estate market was starting to fall apart, right? And I was at a high frequency trading firm in Chicago, and we made gobs of money as the market crashed because we were able to short basically the entire market. And we would short everything all day and then buy it back at the end of the day and do it again the next day, right? And it was just a total free fall. So that was kind of a delusional way to into the financial start a financial career, right? I mean, the amount of money that was made, like I didn't get to keep, of course, but the amount of money that was made was staggering, and it was exciting. And then the market hit bottom, and I was the young guy on the totem pole, and they cut me with eventually half of the rest of the firm. Uh, and the lows in finance are really low, right? I mean, through '09 and through basically 13, I was just kind of struggling. Wasn't sure if I'd stay in finance, wasn't sure if I'd get to trade again. And then found this job in Korea and just packed up and moved. Um, I gave away my stuff. I put everything in 2 suitcases, jumped on a plane, landed in Seoul, and started trading Kospi options, and got to do that for quite a few years,
What year
and it
was
was
that when you
exciting.
first came to Korea?
I landed in July of 13. Actually, just about this time. I think it was the 5th. Yeah, I think it was the 15th of July. So in 2013, I came out there and was working at a Korean securities firm, which was a huge adjustment, right? Completely different style from like prop trading firms in Chicago, right? Way more conservative, way less sophisticated, way behind in terms of technology, way less understanding, way more regulation. Yeah, like just everything. It was a huge transition.
Okay. How would you consider the US and Korean finance systems, like working in these industries? Like how different are they? I guess you've mentioned a few big differences.
Yeah, they're massively different, right? I mean, in the U.S., I mean, and it runs across the board, right? I mean, I would say technology wise and product wise and things like that, Korea lags the US by probably at least 10 years, 5 to 10 years, I would say. Products that were incredibly popular many years ago are just starting to catch on. Um, and and Korea's just kind of, they take their own pace with that, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? I mean, a lot of the products that the US has come up with have gone horribly wrong too. So there's good reason to be conservative. Um, in terms of people, I think Korea hasn't positioned itself as well as it could. They don't incentivize people well. I met a trader who, it was midway through the year, and he was like, "Well, I've maxed out what I can make on my bonus this year, so I'm just kind of hanging out for the rest of the year." In the US, that wouldn't happen. That you would, your bonuses can be so big, that if you were halfway to your goal, or if you'd reached your goal by June, you were going to have a massive year that year. and you would just keep pushing and you would trade like crazy, but the Korea, like, they don't pay bonuses the same way. They don't incentivize people to actually push on their own. And, again, there's good and bad to that, but I prefer to be incentivized, right? Like,
Yes, as we all should prefer to be incentivized properly. So we should all be incentivized to, like, take more action. And
yeah.
I assume that's why you started branching out to, doing investments outside of Korea. At one point after working at in Korean securities, where you're like, maybe there's like other opportunities like to make money with my money.
Yeah, I mean, there was a combination of factors that happened in order for me to make that transition, right? I mean, one, the Korean firm that I was working at didn't want to continue the business with my desk, and so they cut me and my team, which was still an odd business decision that I haven't quite wrapped my head around. The desk was delta neutral, so there was very low risk, and yet very consistent returns and a good return on your money for not taking any risk. If I could have done things my way, I would have added some risk to it, and I think your portfolio returns would have been greatly improved with a very small amount of additional risk. But they did what they did. And then, yeah, like, opportunities came up. Like, I had started trading cryptocurrency on my own. There were markets that were, still fairly illiquid, but volatile and interesting. And so I'd started doing that, and it turned into this opportunity with GLT, where we combined the, I guess, corporate and institutional trading with my understanding of crypto and other markets. And then from there, we've just kept expanding and looking at other things that we could do that we are where we can fill an interesting niche, right? Like, we're not a massive fund. I don't have hundreds of millions of dollars. So I can't compete on certain deals that those kinds of firms do. But I have more than $10, right? So, like, there's certain deals that I can do. And so I'm just constantly looking for where we can fill an interesting gap there. And part of why we like these emerging economies is because you typically have people that are maybe asset rich but cash poor, and that's something that the cost of living in many of these areas is relatively low, so it doesn't take a huge amount of capital to have a pretty big impact in terms of and getting a return. So that's what we're looking at right now.
So there might be people with like lots of assets, but not enough liquid capital. So you step in and provide liquid capital at a
Yeah,
certain at a decent interest rate.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we're working on here in Thailand, right? Is we're doing some collateralized lending and things where we use assets as collateral, and we provide short-term liquidity for them in terms of cash, and then, and go from there. And it's not rocket science. This isn't like a new cutting edge business. This kind of product has been around for ages, but we're willing to do it, and we've, come up with some, I think, a good way to manage the risks associated with it, and,
I
so.
think I think I mean that sounds fun because like I know you and you get a little nerdy with these things. It's like you're setting up a big machine. It's like
Yeah.
not exactly as complex as like like a Rube Goldberg device, but like you're building your sandcastles and like, oh, I hope the sandcastle lasts, and then you see
Right.
the machine tick and then makes you money. I think
Yeah.
that's really cool. Like aside from Thailand, like what other countries have you like sought to do investment opportunities in?
I mean, I've done a bunch of research into Turkey, and I really liked Turkey. I still think it's interesting. There's some issues with getting on the ground. Obviously, there's been some political unrest. They devalued the currency. There's a bunch of things, but I think that a lot of that can still be mitigated. And I do think it's still an interesting place. Um, Here, I think, Southeast Asia, I think, is still really interesting. We're currently doing a bunch of research in Latin America as well. So, my business partner and I both love Mexico. I think I'm a huge fan. I like it. I like everything about Mexico. Maybe minus the cartel drugs and violence, but the rest of it is all pretty great, right? And so we've got some stuff that we're working on there that's interesting. Yeah, yeah. And we're trying to take it. I'm just taking it step by step. I'm only, this is small. I'm basically running it. My business partner has another job and does his own thing. So, I don't, in terms of manpower, I can only do so much, right? And so we're trying to get this, Thailand up and running and functioning the way we want it to. And then I can move my attention to something else to get it up and running and functioning. And we just keep sort of moving around like that. Eventually we'll add more staff and more help, um, but yeah, not yet.
I see. Well, aside from the fact that you're not in Korea right now, how's Corona affected like your business this year?
I mean, it's been tough, right? It's been hard for everybody, right? Before this, I traveled probably every month. I was on the road some, right? And so just in terms of meeting people, networking, stuff like that, that's all been, you know, just that's pretty much non-existent. It's hurt, people, customers, like clients and stuff that we've worked with, like they're short on cash. Their businesses have taken hit. I mean, Thailand has been completely locked down, right? When for a while here, you couldn't leave the city you were in. There are police checkpoints at every city. You couldn't come in and out.
Oh, please tell me more. Yeah, Thailand, the whole
Yeah,
Corona
yeah.
policy and everything.
Thailand was really harsh. I mean, there was a curfew was in effect. You couldn't be out at night. They were going door to door testing. Yeah, all businesses were closed except grocery stores. They shut down 7-Eleven. They shut down everything. I mean, yeah.
Not
Um,
7-Eleven. How wait,
well,
they shut down 7-Eleven? That's
they made
crazy.
they closed everything. I mean, anybody who's been to Thailand knows like people pay their bills at 7-Eleven. It's always. I mean, that's just a store that's sort of always there, always open, always available. No, they closed it. And for a while they were gonna, they left it open at first, saying, oh, you can buy food there, it's okay, and then give it like another week, they shut it all down. You had Yeah, I mean, they closed the beach. You couldn't go to the beach. There was a period where they were saying that it was okay to exercise outside, but there were reports of foreigners being arrested for being outside exercising. So I carried like a shopping bag with me when I'd go out and take an exercise, and then I never got stopped. But my thought was, I'd just go, oh, I'm going to the store, and pray it got me through it. Because again, like, everything, the news reports all said it was fine to do, but it was really, really strict, and the airports are closed. They closed the bridge to Phuket. They closed all the ports, no boats in or out. I mean, the whole place was just shut down. Mhm.
And how long was it locked down like that? Like I assume you have more freedom now.
Yeah, yeah. It's most of it's lifted now. The international airport they're not accepting international flights yet. They're accepting a few domestic flights. The bridge is open. I'm not sure about ports for boats. Most businesses are open now. Even the like Bangla, like the nightlife districts are starting to reopen. Although I haven't been. Everyone I've heard who's gone that I talked to said that there's nobody there. It's really dead still. But like technically, you could go out, I guess. So that's all starting to improve, but Phuket is really tourist driven and there's no tourists. And so, the businesses are open, but it's almost in some ways maybe worse because now you've got costs that you're running, but there's still nobody to sell anything to.
Yeah.
So, but I'm trying to remember exactly when they locked stuff down. May and June they started to lift it in May. Uh, or in June they started to lift it. So all of May was locked down entirely. And I think end of April they tightened even more. And it just, but they had about 220 some odd cases. I think there were 3 deaths here, and they don't have any active cases right now. So, and they haven't for weeks. So, I mean, there's always a trade-off with this kind of thing. I think that the economist in me will just go thinks the optimal number of cases is not 0. It's you don't want deaths and you don't want people to be sick, but the cost of getting 0 cases is really severe, and it's probably not worth it ultimately.
Yeah, that's hard. And like Phuket, yeah, being tourist driven, I mean, there's basically no more revenue. Like there's no money. I
Yeah.
went to Boracay at the beginning
Hmm.
of this year for the first time. My first time in the Philippines, and it was like high season. It was just packed, just people from all over the world. And even though it was packed and a bit commercialized, like I still had a great time.
Sure, it's
And
beautiful.
to go in high season, you know, the tickets were like over 400,000 won a person, but
Hmm.
it was still totally worth it to go with my best friend and my girlfriend. Just seeing
Yeah.
so many people, meeting so many people, and then months later to see like YouTube videos and to talk with friends who are on that island, like locals, to see that's completely dead. It was like really disheartening. It's like, wow, yeah, an island. Think about a tourist-driven island economy. It's just like no
Yeah.
one is there. The
There's
shops are all
nothing.
closed, beaches closed.
Yep.
It's really tragic, especially for the locals who completely depend on tourism, economy. Um,
Absolutely.
and like I heard, it's kind of opening up back up, but I'm just really grateful to be living in Korea right now because it's safe, it's clean. Itaewon is dead, just like maybe Phuket is, but they're like
Sure.
Bangla.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Sure.
I'm really lucky, and I try to find gratitude in my day to day life and be like, okay, well, even though it's hard in Korea for Korean people,
Hmm.
well, at least it's not completely like tourist driven like some of those areas.
Well, and from what I've heard, I mean, haven't been there, but from the people I've talked to, I think Korea has done a good job at managing it. I know, like, there have been spikes and there's been other things, but like Korea hasn't ground to a halt. People are still working. People are still doing their thing. It's not like the U.S., which is now doing over 60,000 cases a day. I mean, like I think Korea did a good job. They got out testing, they tested aggressively, they, came up with a way to manage it. Like I said, I don't think the optimal number of cases is zero. It's not. We've got to be able to live and function too. And I think Korea's doing a good job, honestly. You know?
Yeah, so for that reason, before Corona, I was just like, oh man, I wouldn't want to live in America. God bless America. Like I'm so happy to live in Korea, and I feel that even more so with Corona 2020, in the Corona apocalypse.
Yeah,
Um,
seriously.
but you know, these days, like I'm so grateful to live here, and every year, right around July, my birthday goes by, and I think about like where I come from, which is like, small town America, small town in Rhode Island, USA. And to think
Yeah.
that I moved to Korea like almost 8 years ago to find myself and pursue like my big city dreams. It's like a dream come true, man. Like I'm so happy that I moved here, and I'm really grateful to be alive like every single day. And I meet amazing, intelligent, kind people like yourself. I wanted to ask you more about like where you grew up, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with the audience, and how you think that's shaped you as a person.
Sure,
Where did
sure.
you grow
So
up?
I was born in Utah. I was born in Ogden, Utah, which is north of Salt Lake City, about 45 minutes to an hour. I'm the second child of six kids in a Mormon family. Um, and um, yeah, I mean, I did that whole thing for a while. Um, I served a Mormon mission. I came to Korea initially in 2001 as a missionary, and I spent 2 years there. That's where I learned Korean. And predominantly, when I came back to the U.S., I studied it in college as well to try to round it out. When I was there, I learned to speak and read. I couldn't write very well, and so when I came back, I focused on that and took some more classes in college because they were fun and easy way to make friends and stuff. And I liked it. Yeah, I mean, it's had a big impact on me. I'm not actively, well, I'm not religious at this point. I don't really believe in any of that. Um, but it did have a big impact on me. I think, it's important how you live your life, and it's important to treat people well. And I think it's important to be generous and kind to those around you. And I also, I don't drink. I never have. It doesn't interest me. I like to have a good time. You've been out with me. Like I think, I think I do just fine without it. And I think that's been a positive influence in my life. Honestly, I've had friends struggle. My first boss in Korea, his life just went off the rails. He became a completely non-functional alcoholic. Um, I've seen it quite a few times, and it's not pretty. And I'm glad I don't have to worry about that. Not to like be a buzzkill or kill a party, right? I love a good time, and I don't care if people drink when they go out and have a good one. But I'm happy with my decision not to, and that's been a takeaway from my upbringing for sure.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, having just finished a 4 month sobriety streak, the more every time like I do it, I'm just like, wow, like people go absolutely wild. Like on a busy weekend,
Hmm.
pre-corona, it's just like, people they want to like let loose stress, or they just want to go wild. Maybe they just had a bad breakup. People go
Sure.
out. You see like the best and worst of humanity sometimes going out, and especially
Oh,
when
totally.
there's alcohol involved. But you like, I just think it's funny coming from your perspective, because I imagine Matt must think like people are just so stupid. Like when they like
I,
get so
but I,
drunk and wasted and they throw up. I'm just like, Matt must be like, oh
but I,
my
d-
god.
I really don't though, because I think that um, yeah, I don't think people are stupid, and it doesn't bother me when people. I like. I'm a fairly high stress person. Like I've always worked in a field that has quite a bit of stress. I get stressed out. I understand wanting to let loose, and I like to let loose. I love to go out dancing. I love to burn, and I know like that feeling is exciting, and I like that, and I can see how alcohol adds to it, and I don't think that's crazy. I don't at all. I mean, there is a point in the night I have found after, I've been doing this for my whole life now. There is a point where conversations only make sense if you're drunk. And I try to leave, I try to be gone by that point because um, no one remembers. No one remembers the conversation except me, which is not particularly great. um, and there's no way to add or argue to the conversation. So like that's when you're at that state of intoxication, I usually bounce.
Right, remove yourself from the situation.
Yeah,
That's
but
good.
but again, I don't see it as oh, these people are stupid. It's just like people just are out. We've all got stress. We all like to burn it. We like to relax and find ways to do it, and alcohol helps that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great um takeaway. I think that's a pretty good influence, like from your background, growing up in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints,
Right.
which is
Well,
the funny name for the Mormon Church.
right.
Yes.
Well, and when I grew up, right, I grew up and because I was in a Mormon community, there were it was lots of people didn't drink, but many people did. And so it was not
Mm,
odd. It wasn't weird to go to a party and have half the party not drinking and half the party drinking.
mm,
I was a little bit older, so I got my driver's license first. So I was designated driver from an early time, and I've had friends who drink and friends who don't, and I was always comfortable socializing without it, and it was always useful to have a designated driver that you didn't have to worry if they were going to like slip up that night and have a few or anything like that. Right? It was just never an issue. So, like, yeah, I think you don't need alcohol to socialize. You don't need it, but it helps many people to relax, and it's a conditioning thing too, to some extent, right? Like people get used to socializing in certain ways, and then it feels uncomfortable to not be doing those things. So that's just, yeah, I think that's just life.
yes. Yeah, it's just life. Like you don't, especially after, taking these streaks of sobriety, I try to really reinforce to myself that although I enjoy alcohol, I don't need it to have a good time. I can go out,
Exactly.
I can dance, I can connect with people, I can listen to people. And if I
Mhm.
really want a drink in my hand, then I can have some club soda or whatever.
Right.
If that's the issue. Otherwise, if I'm out and about where people in an environment where people go out to meet, meet people, then I shouldn't need an excuse. I can just go up to anyone and be like, "Hey, how are you? Are you having a good
Yeah.
time? What brings you here?" In just like a friendly, curious manner.
Yeah.
I don't need alcohol, right? I don't need to use anything as a crutch. Like I am who I am. I have
Exactly.
value to offer, and I have curiosity about other people. I want to connect, and anyone can adopt these attitudes. No one needs
Right.
like some substance outside themselves.
Right. And now the caveat that I would add to that where not drinking can, I mean, I think with all your decisions, there's always a cost and a benefit, right? And for me, the benefits outweigh the costs. But one of the costs that I've found from not drinking is that there are many people bond very closely by drinking together,
Mm,
and by not drinking with them, some people they have a harder time bonding with you. You have to make more of an effort, you know? And for me, again, the cost is, I'm okay with the cost. But it is something I think that people will notice. I'm sure you probably noticed when you've taken time to be during and done these sobriety periods, when people want to do shots or they want to buy you a drink or they want to connect that way, and you're like, oh, I'm not drinking, buy me a club soda. And for some people, it doesn't create the same connection, right?
Yeah, and it's like, especially since I've gotten back on the juice, right, since my
Mm-hmm.
birthday, like I find myself like if I'm with someone, like I want them to drink with me, and just like
Yeah,
and it's like this is kind of stupid, but it's like a primitive thing, like bonding over consuming like the same thing, like like the
yeah.
pack, drinking from the same source, or the pack, consuming from the same deer that they slay or whatever,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and that's, you participated, for my 40th birthday this year, I sent out a survey because I couldn't see anybody, right?
which was
And
awesome and
it
so
was
nerdy.
really,
I love it.
it was super nerdy, and I
Can you
totally
please
geeked out
explain?
on.
Yes, explain the
Sure,
survey
I'll
a bit.
tell you. So I sent out 8 questions to the 40 people in my life that I feel close to, family and friends. And I had people fill out surveys, and then I did a bunch of data analysis and wrote a little summary and sent it out to everyone. It's about as nerdy and dorky as you can get. But I asked people things like, what were their first memory and their favorite memory of us? What were 4 characteristics they didn't like about me? 4 characteristics they liked about me? First 4 words that came to mind when they think about me. What year did we meet? Something, and then any other advice, something like that. It was brief. I tried to keep it brief. Um, and and then everyone, a bunch of people responded, and I put together all the data and got to play around with it and build some charts in Excel, which makes me happy. So, um, but one of the things that I realized and noticed in that, was that often there were sort of two, for me, because again, I don't drink, so, but I do love a good adventure. So for bonding with people, there were really 2 types of events that happened. Either we went on some crazy adventure together, right? Or it was something really simple and small, like when we sat and had lunch together this one time, or we did this. And sharing food, sharing drink, sharing those sorts of, things with, as humans, I think we connect that way. I think it's part of maybe the tribalism in us, that you don't do that with people you don't trust. You don't do that with people you don't like. And I think we inherently either develop trust with people we do those things with, or we feel that connection with them. And yeah, so I think the drinking makes sense in that sense. Sharing food together is another thing that bonds lots of people, right? I love doing a rooftop barbecue. That was one of my favorite things in Seoul. Have a bunch of good food and friends over, and there were lots of memories of that people had. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the time we sat on the rooftop and ate. You know.
Yeah, I've had some of the best times of my life in Seoul, just hanging out with you and James and other good friends. I love putting your sweet, sweet meat all up in my mouth. I mean, I crave that like every year. So this year it feels a little sad. Something's missing.
Sure,
It's like
sure,
I
sure.
miss Matt's meat on a like, because really we had it every year like consecutively.
Yeah, I've
Um,
done it for a long time, and I tried to do something, spring, summer, fall. I love to do the Halloween thing. Um, yeah, I think those kinds of things are a great way to bond with people and something to look forward to. And I had a good time trying to perfect steak. I tried to get it just right, and I think I've got it pretty dialed in there. So
Yeah, that's been so awesome, and I always like appreciated your generosity. Just like, hey, bring some snacks or please bring some drinks. Like I'm not gonna drink, but just to share with other people. And you provided the meat and your awesome rooftop space with a beautiful view of the city. Like everyone loves that. Everyone remembers that. And you just provide such value and such positive energy and laughter and a shiny head for you're a shiny beacon on that rooftop. It's like I learned so much, just like how to be a good host and how to be a good friend and how to care for people and like table manners and stuff. So I really appreciate that, and I miss you, dude.
I
I
miss
miss
it
all
too.
that.
Yeah, yeah. That's something that I really enjoyed. That was some part of part of, I think, my favorite thing in Seoul was just having people over and being able to just enjoy enjoy the space and the company and all of that. And it's something that I've definitely missed here. I don't have that network here with things locked down. It's been tough to meet new people. Um, and so, um, yeah, yeah, I look forward to things sort of maybe returning to normal where you can socialize a bit more and, you know,
Yes, and I look forward to that as well. I would like to go back though, because I have a couple of questions
sure,
in
sure,
regards to like growing up in the Mormon church, if you don't mind. Like, what was the
sure.
community like? Like what kind of people did you connect with? Like, was like, because the stereotype for me is like, Mormons are so nice, right? And you're actually one of the nicest people I know, so you just reinforced that stereotype for me. Like,
There
what
are
were
worse
there?
stereotypes, right?
Yes.
No,
Hmm.
I mean the community was supportive, right? I mean, like, and I think many religions and church organizations provide that kind of community. There were always people around when someone got sick, people would bring meals over, people would help out. I remember, I'm the second of six kids. So my mom had one really hard pregnancy where was on bed rest and she couldn't get up and move around. And my dad was working, and working overtime, trying to make sure he had enough money to feed the growing family and all of that. And people in the neighborhood brought food. They came and cleaned the house. They did a bunch of stuff I mean, it's a good community in that way, you know. So yeah, I mean, I think I was surrounded by people who, in general, tried to be honest, tried to be trustworthy, tried to care about people around them. I think, if anything, it probably made me a bit naive coming out, like leaving. Sometimes people in Utah refer to it as the bubble, or I recently heard the Zion curtain.
The
Um,
Zion curtain. Ooh, I
yeah,
like that.
um, but it's an isolated community. I mean, you've got the Rocky Mountains on one side, you've got a big desert on the other. There's just it's geographically isolated, and it creates a little bit of a bubble where people kind of know that and live there. And when you get outside of it, the world doesn't always work the same way. And I definitely had to, when I moved out to Chicago for school, I had to up my street smarts a bit.
Okay, like what was like your first like culture shock, like when you're leaving the bubble? Like you went to Chicago for college,
I
and
did.
so
So I
so
mean,
that was your
first
first time moving out of the community.
I mean, the first I left for Korea first. I served my mission before I went to college. So, and as a missionary, that was definitely you're out of the bubble, right? I had people. I mean, I was in Korea during, again, 2001, 2003. There were some problems with American military. There was a big scandal at the Olympics between the a U.S. speed skater and Korea. People screamed and yelled at me at the streets. People called my phone and told me to go back to the U to get out of Korea. Drunk guy tried to beat me up. I was
What?
chased. I mean, like, I saw a lot of stuff. I learned a lot as a missionary, and like I was not seriously hurt or anything like that, but like there were times where it was scary, and there was times where you definitely realized that you're on your own. Um, so that actually gets me to another sort of takeaway. I'm very much, I think, I mean, I'm a white, middle-aged, middle-class male, right? And in American society, there's a certain amount of privilege that comes with that. But I think that being in a minority religious community, it gave me some insight into what other minority groups feel. Because, I did an internship in New York in college, and I was like the Mormon kid, and I didn't drink, and I was singled out for it. And it wasn't, again, like, it's hard. This is a first world problem, right? I mean, it's,
That's still annoying. Like that would bother anybody.
of course, right? But I mean, this is the thing. Like, it gave me a glimpse or a bit of insight into what it's like. But again, I mean, so again, like, how do you complain about this, right? I got an internship at an investment bank in on Wall Street. Like, that's about as privileged as you can get in many ways, right? But I also got to see that, like, what it's like to be outside. right? And moving to Korea, that was also, as a foreigner in Korea, you're not Korean. And when I was there as a missionary, there were stores that refused to sell stuff to me. There were places that told me as a foreigner I had to leave. And even when I came back and was working in finance there were businesses that would not do business with me because I was not Korean. And it's incredibly frustrating, but it lets you feel and understand what that has to be like for other people. And I think that that's a valuable thing to understand.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've also learned how to deal when you're the foreigner living in another country, like how to overcome those obstacles, how to still make connections, how to see past these things, not take them personally, so you do what you want to do and you do what you need to do.
Yeah, you have to adjust and you have to adapt, right? Um, but it is always very different living in a society where the default it looks like you. And so that again, if I'm in the United States and I get stopped by the police, I have a pretty good sense of what's going to happen, right? There's not a lot of fear for me. There doesn't, unfortunately there is for other groups, and but in Thailand, I don't want to be stopped by the police. I don't trust the police. When I lived in Mexico, I definitely didn't want to get stopped by the police.
Mm.
I didn't want to be I did everything I could to avoid the police there. When I moved to Mazatlan, the locals told me everything is good in Mazatlan except the police. And so, I knew like those aren't people who are going to help me, and just stay away. And, if, hopefully, and at the time, I didn't need there was nothing serious happened to me or anything like that.
What's up with what's up with the police in Mazatlan?
I mean, Mazatlan is in Sinaloa, and so they're connected to the cartel and everything else. And you just have to be careful, Mazatlan is where they caught El Chapo. He was in a condo there, or in a residence there that was about a kilometer away from where I lived when I was there.
Wow.
I walked past it every day when I would go to the beach. So, of course, had no idea, but I saw later on the news when he was arrested there. I was like, oh, I know that neighborhood. So,
So you've lived in Thailand, Korea, anywhere else? Where have you traveled to, and where do you see yourself staying for the long term?
I lived in Mexico for about 6 months, um, and that's it in terms of places I've lived. Um, um, I've traveled a lot. I traveled a lot for work this last couple of years. So, um, I've seen a fair amount. There's more places I would like to see and go. Long term is tricky. I don't really know. I've not found a place that has exactly everything I want. And so my vision has sort of been um, to spend to divide my time the places that have things that I like. And of course, Corona has made that extremely challenging, and this plan may go off the rails if travel continues to be as problematic as it is right now. But I guess that's more of my long-term idea, is that I'd like to spend time in a variety of places that I really like. And if I split my year that way, great. You know.
That's cool. And sorry, I forgot. There's one more question I want to ask.
Sure.
Which is at one point, going back to you being a missionary. At what point did you realize like this is not for me? Like this is not. I don't think I can follow the beliefs of my church anymore. At what point did you start to question? When did it start to unravel? Because for me, I had a big faith crisis. Like I was
Hmm.
all gung ho about it. Like I was a conservative, reformed Christian, and I want to be a pastor for Jesus, and I want to save lives and stuff like that. And I just want to worship the Trinity every day. Like I want to be a pastor. I
Hmm.
was all about it. That was my major, biblical and theological studies, in Massachusetts at the
I
school
didn't
that I went
realize.
to.
Okay.
Yeah. I was all about it. Like I was like, this is what I want to be. Like, I'll be straight edge Christian, never drink, never smoke, never do drugs, no sex before marriage. Oh,
Hmm.
uh, um, and I at one point I believed that the Earth was 6,000 years old. Like I was in it that deep, and I was that in my eyes I was that hardcore because it was just like this is the
Right.
Bible, and this is the
Sure.
inerrant Word of God. And then after taking some history classes and like talking with a very kind, generous, and intelligent New Testament professor who I would spend some hours at his office, like arguing with him. Like, but if
Hmm.
the Bible, if there's a contradiction here, then this means it's then you can't be because this is an inner work God. And it's just like, well, like this is a book, mime, that was written by like a variety of people at different times for a different audience. There's all this historical context. Like, if you
Yeah.
really want to appreciate the text and the Word of God, then if this is the Word of God, then you want to understand the whole historical context. So sometimes you'll read this thing, it might not make sense. Like, no, this is inerrant. This is the perspicuity of Scripture. It must be perspicuous, right? It must be very
Right.
obvious. So long story short, I had this whole faith crisis. I remember this moment where like my faith is just like in my hand. It's like sandcastle of belief
Hmm.
structure. And it's just like I'm walking away from my New Testament professor's office, and I'm just like I feel like my whole world is crumbling apart.
From.
Like I was like, oh, this is all bullshit. Like this is not real. Like, what do I live for now? What gives me meaning if not for God and Jesus, right? What meaning does my life have? It was probably the most traumatic experience of my life to lose like all my belief. There's no heaven. Like after we die, what happens? And
Right.
this is just me scratching the surface for the first time. Like I was so like deep in it for like my whole life. I used to believe that I was going to go to hell, and then I thought I was going
Hmm.
to be saved, and I want to be a pastor. And now, but
Right.
now I experienced spiritual ecstasy where like I'm in just like months of tear, like spiritual communion with God. But then all of a sudden I can't believe in God anymore. All my joy is taken away. My meaning for life is taken away. Like I want to kill myself, right? Like when my life has no meaning. I don't know if you went through something that extreme, but I'm so glad I went through that experience. And so
Yeah.
I'm super curious. I always have been like, at what point, Matt, it doesn't have to be as dramatic as mine, but I really want to know what point did you start shifting away?
Yeah, I mean,
And
I
be,
don't. My it definitely wasn't as dramatic as yours. I had a very combative relationship with religion my whole life. And so when I was in junior high school, I refused to go to church. I stopped. And at the time, it was partly a power struggle with my parents, but I fought very hard. And there were things that just didn't click for me. I've always struggled with um, the way prayer is usually explained and how that is supposed to work. Um, and among other things. And then, as I got into high school, I started thinking maybe I realized one that there was a huge amount of just power struggle happening, and I'm a very independent person. I have been for a long time, and I don't like to be controlled like that. And so for me, a lot of it was my parents said, you have the choice to go to church, but the choice is always you have to go. And that's not a choice. And it just drove me crazy, the inconsistency, right? So, but as I got into high school, I was like, well, maybe I've not really given the religion itself a fair shake. So I started to get into it. I saw a lot of good. My brother had served a mission. My dad had served a mission. Um, and it had been, my family had benefited from it. And so I thought, yeah, let's dig into this and let's see. And I felt good about it. I felt like it was good, and that there were a lot of things that I would be able to help a lot of people. So I went on a mission. As a missionary, there were things that that I had been consistently told work a certain way, and then they didn't really. What bothered me. There's just always been questions that I don't really feel like I can get solid or comfortable answers with. And then I started to find out more about things that the church had sort of intentionally covered up, misled people about, not been really truthful about. And I think everyone's human, and people make mistakes, and people, lie to save face and do all sorts of things. But if you are claiming to be, um, receiving revelation from God or some sort of higher anything, I think you have to be held to a higher standard. And that bothered me. I remember for me, it wasn't this big dramatic thing. I woke up one Sunday in college. I went to church. I woke up. I felt great. It was a wonderful day, beautiful day. I felt really good. I went to church, and you know me. I can't really keep my mouth shut, and so there were things at church that we were having a discussion, and there were a bunch of things that just weren't consistent and bothered me. And so I just started asking questions about it, and it just turned into sort of this confrontational argument. um, and I left church that day just being like, I felt great this morning, and I went to church, and I feel terrible now. And and I don't know why I'm doing it. The questions that I have, there aren't answers for, not currently. There are people that genuinely go to church to recharge their spirit, to recharge their soul, to take a break from when life is really horrible and to feel connected to a community. And I felt like that day I had detracted from anyone who was trying to do that. And I hadn't benefited myself because I left, I had a beautiful day and I felt great in the morning and I felt really, really anxious and agitated and irritated and upset when I'd finished. And I thought, why am I doing this? And so I said, I'm going to take a break. I'm just going to take a break. And, I tend to fixate on things. When I focus a lot. And so there were these issues, these problems, these doctrinal questions that I just kept going round and round and round and round, right?
Can you share like maybe one salient example in the scriptures, or maybe it was like a philosophical thing that you had an argument with a friend or a teacher?
Um, well,
I know it's been a
it's
while.
yeah, but it's not so much that it gets wild. It turns into a whole lot of backstory in order to get to where it's relevant, right? But I think a simple example is prayer. I still argue with my dad about this one, um, and I, so the idea, and again, there's different versions of it. So I'm giving you very much what the sort of the Mormon version, and maybe even the Mormon version from where I was from, sort of was is that you pray to God and God will answer your prayers in His own time and in His own way, and that's the deal, you know. And I found through both being a missionary and life in general that like there were times that I felt like I got answers to prayers that then turned out to not be anything like I expected. So I started to question, okay, how do I know if it's an answer or not? And the Mormon church has a version of this that's like, well, there's certain things that God's going to say yes to, and there's certain things that He's not. And then the question is, then why ask? If you pray and the only answer can be A, that's the only answer you can get. You just keep praying until you get A. What are you doing? Like, what's the point? And so I got to this point where I just felt like going through that motions of praying made me more frustrated in life than not, because this idea that a God loved me and cared about me was somehow going to answer my prayer and take care of me left me feeling frustrated and disappointed when it didn't happen, or I felt that it didn't happen. Where when I just said, look, if there is a God, He doesn't care about me. If there's not a God, then I'm just going to go about my life, and it's up to me to sort my stuff out, and like good things are going to happen to me and bad things are going to happen to me, and that's just life, and you deal with it and you keep going. To me, that was much more comforting, because I didn't have this like expectation of a loving father looking out for me that then didn't do anything from my perspective, right? And I think this is, if so that was sort of one of the issues with prayer, right? If the timeline for the answer is up to God and not up to the immediate crisis that you're going through and that you feel like you're going through, then what's the point? So again, people who have faith and believe will have a counter argument to that, and I understand that. That's fine. But for me, I didn't find it comforting. I didn't find peace in it. I found the exact opposite. And so, um, yeah, so I took a break that Sunday after it was a discussion about some other things as well. But I just said, why do I keep doing this? I'm just gonna set it aside for a little while. Like I said, I tend to fixate on things. So like I set it aside. Once it's not those things aren't such a big deal, maybe I can come back to it. But as I got it, when I stopped, the next week, it was this huge relief. And like, I just haven't missed it. I haven't missed going. I haven't missed trying to reconcile these things that don't really reconcile very easily. I've learned and seen a lot more things that the church does that I disagree with. Shortly after that, the church was really opposed to gay marriage, which didn't make any sense to me. Mormonism has its own version of the marriage ceremony, so they don't even really care about what state marriages are. Um,
Mm.
and if you want to talk about history, like the Mormon Church has a history of non-traditional marriages. So it seemed a bit hypocritical for them to be that opposed to like other people wanting something. Like, I just didn't get it. I didn't get it. It didn't make sense to me. Then there's been more and more as I've been away. There's been more and more things that I look back on, or changes that they've made that I go, I'm not on board. I'm not on board with it. And so, yeah, that was kind of it for me.
Thank you for sharing that. What would you say to other, I don't know, young believers, or either they go to Mormon church, or maybe they go to synagogue, or maybe they go to a Catholic church, like that are kind of like coming into maybe someone's listening to this 14 or 17, and they're just having their questions for the first time about the faith or like the religious institution of church in their community. To like they're starting to ask these kind of questions. What would you say to your younger self, right, when you start to have these questions?
You just keep asking them. Like, I mean, I think everyone's sort of spirituality, or emotional, whatever, I don't want to, whatever you want to call it, right? It's up to you to find and reconcile like what you believe and what you care about in life. And there are, there's religion has done a lot of good and a lot of horrible things in the world. Just like every human, right? We do good things and we do bad things. And so, if you find peace and you find, comfort and those things in religion, that's fine. But if you have questions and it doesn't make sense to you, keep asking. Like, you need to find where you're happy. I guess for me, I'm comfortable with the decision I made because I think I'm being honest to myself, and I think that matters. And I think that if it turns out that there is a God and He's incredibly disappointed in me for my life decisions, I'll deal with that and I'll talk to Him. But like, from my perspective, where I'm at, I don't think I would live differently. I think I treat people well. I think I live my life the way where I can sleep well at night. I look in the mirror and I like what I see. And, for the most part, there's always, of course, things you could improve, whatever. But like, in general, I don't have any regrets about that stuff. And I think, I think that's, yeah, I think, if people are going through that or looking into that or curious about it, like, if you're trying to find religion or you're trying to leave, again, you've got to follow your own path, and life takes all kinds of twists and turns. And you never when I was a missionary, I didn't expect this is where I'd end up. Right. And, but this is where I am. And,
Same here.
yeah. And I'm okay with it. That's the thing, is I'm okay with it. Like, I don't see that that's a bad thing, that life has sent me in a direction that I didn't anticipate. That's life.
Indeed. Like I'm actually, despite, the trauma and the turmoil and the confusion I went through in my late teens and early 20s, like I'm so glad I had all these experiences. Like, I have my problems with religion and I have my problems with church, and I see the good and bad just as much as you do, probably, or in a similar way. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that I actually like turned away from that. I feel like, in a way, that God has answered my prayers, right? If He is there, like,
Mhm.
that I actually am in a greater position to live a more effective, meaningful life, like doing this podcast, for example, or being a club party promoter for some time, seeing the best and worst of humanity, connecting with people, learning hospitality, treating them, actually listening to them, just like as my pastors did for me. And I feel like I've
Yeah.
been able to reach a wider audience than I ever would have as like a pastor in a church, and which is why I have this podcast. So in a way, like, I'm still carrying on like the spirit of that dream of being a pastor, which is connection to people, being a healer. And so this is
Yeah.
what I want to do for people who feel like they are disconnected because they're like a minority, right? Like me, maybe being the only Asian kid in the neighborhood that doesn't even speak their own like mother tongue, or like
Right.
just a kid who's like having a hard time wrestling with questions in church, and like, other teachers or other people in the church are like criticizing them for doubting their faith and like all that stupid stuff. Like, so there's so many confused, hurt people out there, young guys and girls. And like I feel like this, with the power of the internet, as I always say, the internet's,
Hmm.
you know, it's so amazing that we have this opportunity to connect and share these awesome conversations with people around the world, so that they can like kind of glean good like wisdom and interesting facts and ideas and different attitudes and different like levels of like conscious energy, so that they can take that and for their own. So maybe they can have like a quantum leap in their mental time. They don't have to like have all these life experiences by themselves. They don't have to be alone. They can read and listen to great books, and they can listen to
Yeah,
awesome podcasts, and they can listen to this conversation between you and me and you. And I hope someone listening to this can take away something, so they can accelerate their spiritual psychological maturity, so that
yeah,
by the time that they're 28 like me or 40 like you, that they're hopefully like miles above us in terms of personal spiritual maturity, and they're just closer to where they want to be in life. Because
yeah.
when I look at you, Matt, like there's one of my favorite YouTube channels these days is called the Nomad Capitalist. Do you ever follow
Sure.
that, with Andrew
Hmm.
Henderson, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
he talks about like having homes around the world that you own, and like spending some parts of the month like in this country and that, like a little bit of Mexico here, a little bit of Colombia there, a little bit of Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia there. And when I think about that, like, oh man, what that's awesome. You know, I hope to have like my own version of that. When I think about that lifestyle, the nomad capital lifestyle, shilling for Andrew Henderson here, like you're one of the first people that come to mind. I'm like, Matt is really like living that dream, and which I think is like so cool and so inspiring, and also because like you're such a good person, like you deserve all the success because you earn it, and you're like a good person, and like I love you, dude. And so
I appreciate that.
and yeah, dude. So I want to thank you for this time. Is there anything you want to share with people out there who are just like, you know, like going through a rough time, or like they're just trying to figure out what maybe they want to do in life, and maybe they're going through their own spiritual struggle? Is there anything you'd like to share
Well,
before we wrap up?
I mean, I mean, we didn't talk about the rough period in my life,
Oh yeah,
when things
actually,
were.
that is one of my
Well,
questions. Sorry.
yeah.
What was one of the hardest times in your life?
Oh, okay. So, I mean, I mentioned, I started trading in '07. I traded the crash in 2009. I got let go from my company, and I would, at the time I felt optimistic. I'd put money in the bank. I was, not horribly concerned about things, but things just got worse. I ended up starting a company with another trader, and we were trading our own thing, which was going really well until he didn't follow our risk parameters, and we got wiped out. And
Oof.
So after about, I'd put about 2 years of work and a bunch of my savings into this, and time and energy, and into this company, and then it disappeared. Um, like at that time, from what was it, '09 to 2010, I lost 95% of my income. I took a 95% hit on income, which was massive, of course.
Oof.
And then yeah, like things just kept going down for me. Not straight down. I started sailing, which I loved, and I became a certified sailing instructor, which was great. But then that turned into my full time job, which was fun but didn't make any money. I ended up getting out of my apartment. I'd lost, basically ended up losing everything. And I was, I would say residence free. Homeless sounds a bit harsher than what it actually
Residence
was.
free.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was residence free for a year
You
and a
were
half.
residence challenged for a cheeky bit.
Yeah, for about a year and a half, I lived off of the kindness of my friends and family. And I mean, it wasn't that I wasn't working, but I just, I wasn't making any money, and so I had some dear friends in Chicago that let me sleep on their floor. That never gave me grief about buying groceries or sharing. They always said, just help yourself to what's in the fridge and eat. Um, they sent me work when they could. They went out of their way to make my life better when it was really horrible. Um, I had my sister spotted me cash when I needed it. And I had literally no idea how I was going to pay it back or when. And I told her then, I was like, I will pay you back, but I don't know when I can do it. I don't have any income basically. And so that was rough. like I said, I bounced around. I slept on floors. I slept in spare rooms. I slept on couches. I slept on boats in the harbor when I couldn't find a place to sleep at night. And I just kind of scrambled,
How old were you at the time?
Was 30, maybe like 31. Yeah. Yeah. In early 30s. And again, like, I'd been trying to keep myself afloat and wiped out my savings. So I was just living best I could. Some good things came from that. I learned to just say yes to life. Sometimes you just say yes. Life throws something towards you, and you go, "Well, yeah, sure. It's not the plan, but I'm just going to do it."
Mm.
Um, but things were rough. I kind of got the mantra of, be positive. Things can always get worse, which sounds sort of twisted and ridiculous, but for me it was comforting. Be grateful for today and be grateful for the problems I have today, because I can't imagine there could be worse things, and you might get them the next day. And there were many days that I did. And so I learned to be grateful for the good things that I have right now, even when things aren't perfect. And it took me a long time. I mean, I left Chicago on a motorcycle. I couldn't afford to stay in the winter because the harbor closed. So I rode to Mexico. And it was a great adventure, and I have a great story from it.
Wow,
Um,
that's amazing.
yeah, but I
A
was broke.
motorcycle from
Yeah.
Chicago to Mexico, and you were broke.
Yeah, so I'd saved up my tips, and I had a, a bit of cash that I'd put in that I had with me. But I rode all the way south. My sister was in Juarez at the time, so I spent a few weeks in Juarez, and then I went and visited a cousin who was in Culiacan, who's in the middle of Sinaloa. And then I went to Mazatlan and got myself a little place on the beach. I thought that there was a harbor there, and I thought maybe I could get work sailing, and I'd be able to work on a boat or do something to kind of keep food coming in. And it didn't work. I wasn't able to. So, but again, I made the most of it. I bought a surfboard, and I would take the bus with my surfboard and go surfing. And it was emotionally healing, although I still wasn't getting paid, and I still wasn't sure what was going to happen next. Um, and then, things started to turn around at the end of the year. I mean, I was working for a company. They refused to pay me for the work that I'd done for them during the winter, so I got hit there. But I found another company. A friend from college, a mentor from college, got me working as a consultant at a hedge fund, and I made, in 2 weeks, I made what I lost in that whole summer or that whole winter. You know,
Wow.
so like life can change. It can go really good to really bad very fast, and it can go the opposite. So you just have to keep your chin up. You have to just keep fighting and keep pushing. And like when things are good, they're not going to stay good, but when things are bad, they're not going to stay bad necessarily either. So um, yeah. Yeah, and then eventually through that whole thing, I started working at this hedge fund doing consulting, and then I found the job in Korea. And then I packed up and moved, and just said, I've been in Chicago. I've had some ups and downs. I'm ready for something different. Let's reset a little bit. And I gave away the friends that had helped me out. I gave away most of my stuff to them as a thank you, that I'd had in storage. And then I just bounced, jumped on a plane. So
That's awesome.
um,
Would you say you're happy these days?
I am happy these days. Again, I think happiness is more of a goal. There's things that you're always grateful for and happy about, but there's always life's never perfect. That's just the way it is. I love being alive. I'll say that.
Same.
I love being alive. I love the twists and turns. Um, I like the adventure of it all, and I'm really grateful for what I have. So
And I'm really grateful too, man. And I think that would be a good way to end it. Thank you so much, Matt. If is there any way you would like people to reach you? I don't think you use Instagram, do you?
I have Instagram. I'm not super active on social media. I've become less and less active on social media, but you can reach me at smartypants982 on Instagram if you care to. I'll be honest, it's probably not that interesting and probably not worth following.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your Matt. In the meantime, enjoy surfing in Phuket, and we'll have a cheeky rooftop barbecue sooner or later.
Sounds good. Sounds
All
good,
right.
man.
Peace out, Mime Timers. Thank you so much. Bye.